Hey, this is Annie Grace, and welcome to this Naked Mind podcast. And I'm here with Emma. Hi, Emma. How are you?
Hi, Annie. I'm super good, thank you. How are you?
Good. I'm doing really good. It's great to see you. So, why don't you kind of walk us back to sort of the beginning of your drinking journey? Where did it all start for you?
Yeah, sure. So, look, I grew up in a mixture of the UK and Africa, very much in the sort of 80s, early 90s, not to age myself too much, but um, very much the culture and the way I was brought up was that we all drank. We drank from our sort of mid-teens, and I was always kind of the life and soul of the party, and I didn't really have um, I didn't really have a notion of being out and and socializing or meeting boys and all those things without drinking. So I pretty much drunk without any issue. It seemed to me I had really good jobs. I worked for some of the biggest companies in the world in London, and went up through the ranks, and constantly we were drinking. So we'd go out every night and go to the pub, and my weekends were basically hanging out with my friends. Either in the winter would have been inside, and outside in the summer, drinking and having a good time. And then I moved to Australia, and I had two
All
babies.
over.
Yeah, and I carried on working for big international corporations, and I was living a really hectic life, very stressful. I didn't see my kids very much at all, and I drank every night pretty much. I took up running, so that was a good thing. So I held down a big career. I was healthy. I was running, but I was drinking, and I was drinking a lot. And I'd got to a point where my world revolved around alcohol, to the point where I couldn't actually do anything or enjoy anything that didn't involve alcohol.
Yeah.
And I'd just be like, I didn't want to do it. I thought there was nothing wrong with this for a really long period of time, and I just thought this was how life should be. And then, yeah, and all my friends drank, yeah, and it was just very much part of my life, and never questioned it. Just literally thought that was, how all the fun people were. And then I got to about 44, and I experienced a really bad burnout at work, and had to stop working for a bit because I was really sick from it. And
Was it physical, or how did that manifest for you? I'm
it was
curious because I can relate to certain aspects of your story.
it was just, I think it was just, I was on all the time. Because I worked internationally, I was in Australia, so I was constantly on calls everywhere. I just think my body and my mind were completely exhausted. I had no time for my kids. I was constantly in that mum guilt. Never had them ready for the activity day. I was the mum who dropped them off at 7 a.m. and picked them up at 6. And most of the time I was working when I got home as well. So yeah, it was how it manifested for me was I just had a bit of a breakdown. I just couldn't, I had a panic attack, and I couldn't go in anymore. And I just couldn't get, there was just a lot of other stuff involved in it, but
So was
yeah,
it like emotional, like you just felt afraid and panicky, or
yeah, and I
anything?
think I'd given so much of myself to corporate,
Mhm.
um, and I wasn't necessarily always getting the support back. And most of my roles and most of my jobs were fabulous, and I had an amazing time, and I don't regret it for a minute. But towards the end, it began to feel like I was giving everything, and I wasn't really getting very much in return. And I decided that wasn't how I wanted to live the rest of my life. So I took some time out, did a bit of healing, added to my running practice a bit of yoga and meditation. And I just really followed my nose. And that's when it started to become apparent to me that what I was doing with drinking wasn't in line with where I wanted my life to be. And there were a few things leading up to that. I've got 2 daughters. They're getting older now, so I've got a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old. And they started to talk about the drinking. And so it became more apparent to me that the drinking was making them uneasy. And this is just such an important part for me, the drinking making children feel unsafe. I was literally last night, I was watching this drug and alcohol presentation that was done here in Melbourne, and they were talking about during lockdown in Melbourne how so many kids are reporting that they're not feeling safe, or that their mummy's slurring her words, and because of the level of alcohol is increasing. I think this concept of our children not feeling safe really troubled me, because I felt like I was a really good person, but I was making my kids feel unsafe. So I'll give you the example of what happened with me. The first inkling was I was putting my kids to bed, and my daughter goes to me, hey mum, can you leave the wine outside when you come and put us to bed, because it's making me feel anxious. And she actually said those words. And I was like, oh, okay. I didn't think too much about it. And then I'd had a couple of stints off drinking. I'd started reading your book. I'd taken 2 sort of 6-week stints off, and each time I'd felt this amazing sense of freedom, that was probably my just freedom to be, not only freedom to be free in my own mind, but also freedom to be available for my kids when they needed me. And that was really empowering. It felt like a place of peace. And I think after it must have been my first or my second 6 week, I went around to some friend's house to watch that movie, Wine Country. Me and my daughter came with me. She was going to go and have a sleepover at someone else's house, but she didn't. So my daughter came with me. She was playing with friend's child, and we as the mum sat around, drank wine. Not a big night at all. There was people in their pajamas. There were people driving home. Obviously I wasn't. And I'd say we probably had a bottle, maybe 2 bottles of wine. But I then walked out the door with my 11-year-old daughter, and I fell into, and it sounds crazy, and it's a funny story in hindsight, but I fell into a rose bush, and it got stuck in my neck where my jugular is.
Oh no.
It was just a stupid trip. It was like literally you're just walking down a path and your foot, and it wasn't even like I'd drunk that much. It was just one of those things. And anyway, my daughter was there, and I was like, no, I'm fine, it's all good. And my daughter's like, no, you're not fine, mum. You're not fine. You've still got a bit of rosebush in your neck, and my friends were going, you need to go to hospital. So my friend looked after my daughter. I went off to A&E. It was a public holiday weekend, and I had to be in emergency all over the weekend because they were so worried because it was so close to the jugular. And I think my moment of deepest shame was when I was discharged, and my exit notes said, and this is Australian kind of UK terminology, but pissed, which means drunk, fell into a rose bush. And I was mortified. I was like, really, Emma, you're 44, 45 years old, for God's sake. Yeah, so that was my wake-up call, I think. But like I say, I wasn't really I never kind of thought I was problem drinking, but I was now doing drinking in a way that didn't work for my values and didn't work with the way that I wanted my children to perceive me. Didn't work with how I wanted to be a mum, and didn't work because more and more I was going through a huge period of growth and learning, and everything I was reading was telling me that, you know, adult modeled, and it was the same with that the presentation I went to last night. Adult modeled behavior has such a huge impact on our children, their future relationship with alcohol. So it's not only about the safety of them and them feeling secure that the adult that they rely on is in a competent state to be able to deal with any emergencies and to keep them safe, but also that potentially my behavior was going to have a knock-on effect for them further down the line. And those things were really kind of where I went, actually, do you know what? I don't think this is for me anymore. Still wasn't completely sold on being alcohol free at this stage though. So I started running every day and listening to your podcasts. And I think I went through November. This is why I'm so happy to be here. This is why I went through sort of November, December, literally listening to you every day as I ran. So just constant, all the time. And something stuck with me on the 365 days. Excuse me. And I just really like that idea of being able to go through each of the different milestones in life. Mm-hmm. And at this stage as well, 365 days felt like a really reasonable thing that I could tell people I was doing. Because everyone kind of understood it, and it didn't mean that I didn't need to have those kind of conversations of, oh, are you stopping forever, and so on and so forth. So I decided in January to stop for 365 days, January this year. And what an interesting year it's been. But it's been amazing. I joined the January live experiment. That was fabulous. I met Scott and yourself and Simon and all these amazing people. And it would just really touch me because you guys are so genuine and so real and lovely and just not at all corporate or fake, or just beautifully kind, lovely, gentle people with a lovely philosophy around, you know, loving yourself and being kind to yourself and forgiving yourself, and just all these beautiful things that I just now, doing what I'm doing now, I find such a beautiful way to be with people. So yeah, I can't talk about it more, but basically in the middle of the January live experiment, I was listening to Rob, I think, and Terry, and I was like, this is my calling. This is what I want to do.
So amazing, Emma.
And that's when I contacted Scott and was like, I really, really want to do the coaching program with you guys. And God, I have not looked back. And I've met the most amazing people. And the sober community is so cool. I had no idea. I was totally in the mindset that, like, so, you know, people who don't drink are like very square, but that's not the case at all. Yeah.
It's like maybe people who never drink, maybe. Actually, that wouldn't even be a fair stereotype. Yeah. Like people who have come through the other side, like we're the fun people.
That's right. It's so interesting. And that connects so well for me, that whole, I think Simon talked about it, that idea of the sober rebel. Mm-hmm. And that actually and I think Holly has, and yourself, it's that idea that you're actually bucking the system by choosing not to drink. And that everybody's trying to make you drink, and that everyone's trying to convince you you're not enough as you are. And I just love that. And I love the name of your book, This Naked Mind, and the reason that you have behind that. And just being naked, being your inner self. It's just a beautiful, beautiful program. Thank you, Amy.
Oh, that's so cool. Well, I should say, just for people who are new to this, so the book title came because it was sort of a few reasons, but actually I was eating bare naked granola, which is great. It's delicious granola. Shout out to Bare Naked Granola. This is not a paid sponsorship, but anyway, it's delicious, and it is all like organic, and it's no kind of fillers or, you know, I don't know, what are those things that keep it safe on the shelf?
Preservatives,
stuff like that. Thank you. Words are hard.
yeah.
It was, and I was like, oh, that's like how I want my mind to be. Like, you know, I don't want my mind to be full of fillers, and like, I want my mind to be naked in that sense. And then it really connected back to me to like how we were created. You know, we were not born with instructions saying, and then, you know, they're going to need to learn how to drink and make sure they get alcohol when they're in their adulthood, because they need that to carry on. And, you know, and I was like, yeah, we were just born just perfectly good. Like, we had everything we needed inside of ourselves. And we didn't need this external substance. But you wouldn't know that by our society. Our society seems to think that actually, no, this is a necessary thing, just like food or something, but it's not true. So anyway, that's kind of the background of the book, but that's quite cool. I know you and I have been having a conversation specifically about the impact of drinking on kids. And we've been talking about the fact that there's definitely, and I've been looking for the sources for you.
Thank you.
That I've read it in various places. But there's very clear impacts of drinking on kids in the sense of the house gets disrupted, things are unpredictable, there's a higher prevalence of abuse, there's a higher prevalence of violence, there's a higher prevalence of like yelling and anger and all of these sorts of things that you think are very clear. But interestingly, and I read this somewhere, and I also have had a cousin in my family, and she says that her mom, so she's my cousin once removed, she's a generation, you know, older than me. And she said that her mother would come home, and she wouldn't drink a lot, but she would drink Friday and Saturday nights because they would go out with their friends, and they would come home and they would come into bed to tuck her in drunk. And she said her mom went from this very stoic, kind of conservative lady to this very gushy, like, oh, I love you so much, my dear, I miss you, and all of this stuff. And actually, for my cousin, this created an equal amount of anxiety for her in her, because it was so unpredictable, and because it was so foreign to how she knew her mom to be. And so it felt really as if her mom was a stranger, and it awakened all these questions like, well, why doesn't she feel like this when she's not drinking? And what is it about alcohol that makes me tolerable to her? And so she actually, to this day, will only ever drink one. She has 5 children. She will only ever drink one bottle of beer, because she never wants to risk that her children see her. And she doesn't imagine that she would be abusive or angry or anything, but she knows that even that overly gushy kind of just absent nature was really, really one of her, she would describe it as one of her most terrifying memories. Her mom would come in the room to kiss them goodnight after a night out. So it's just fascinating how there is an impact, even when it's not the impact that you imagine. And you're like, well, I wasn't beating anybody up, you know, I wasn't smashing things about, but like there's still a big impact.
That's right. There's just that level as well, I think, of just uncertainty for them. What are they going to do? Who's putting us to bed? What's happening? You know, like, oh.
Will dinner be on the table? And I know for us, when we were drinking and we had little kids, it really did depend. If we remembered, you know, like there would no alcohol in our house. It is a very routine. We just naturally fallen into a routine schedule. We eat around 6. You know, bedtime for the 3-year-old is around 7:30. Bedtime for the older boys are between 8:30 and 9. And, you know, we'll watch a show. then we'll go and read. And it's just a very natural rhythm and cadence. And I think we just underestimate how important that is for children. And so when we were drinking, it wasn't like that at all. It might be natural for Monday and Tuesday, and then Wednesday we'd have friends over and we'd be on the back porch. They'd kind of be fending for themselves. We'd be like, oh, it's a late night, go ahead and watch a movie, it's fun for you, don't worry. Right. And like, actually, I thought I was giving them a gift and involving them in the party, but it did create anxiety in their just system, because it wasn't predictable. And
that's right.
Predictability, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, I think it fits in as well with, I remember having the other people's kids come around. We bunch them all in front of a movie. And like occasionally they'd come out and they'd want to do something, like they'd want to perform in front of us or something like that. And everybody was just trying to get rid of them. You know, these poor little kids that you've only got for like such a short space of time would just be like, God, and this is me as well. I'd be like, yeah, come on. Yeah, we're all right. Thank you very much. We'd like to carry on with our adult stuff now. And then as my kids got older, they were just like, Mum, this is rubbish. We don't want to do this anymore. We don't want to go around to that person's house and sit on their couch with people we don't really know that are just your friends.
Yeah, so true. And now my kids, now that they are older and they've been, you know, in an alcohol-free house for a while, they will go out to birthday parties of friends. I'll drop them at the birthday party. I'll pick them up and they'll be like, oh my gosh. And most recently, you know, it'll be like a teacher from their school, because it's a small community and the teachers would be there, kids would be there and everything. And they'd be like, Miss So-and-so was, wow, I just never have seen her like that. She was just giggling and kind of like dancing, and it makes them feel so weird. I was like, how was it for you? Oh, it was weird. It made me feel so weird. It gave me a feeling in my tummy. I was like, oh, interesting. Well, let me tell you about it. It's, you know, because she's sleeping and she don't expect that at school. She won't be like that at school, you know, trying to really help reassure them. But it is very interesting. And one thing I will say that I think is really important, especially for people listening to this who are in the midst of it and in the throes of it and feeling the guilt and the shame, like, I just want to reiterate that, like, compassion for yourself is the absolute best way to change. And so there's a lot of ways you can do that. But one of the ways is just realizing that you are doing the best you can with the tools you had. And so sometimes, I actually recently had another podcast guest, and she told me what she would do when she was imagining, she had an experience where she actually fell down the stairs in a blackout with her infant in her arms. And she was all bruised up, but the baby was okay. And she said when she would feel the guilt and shame of that coming on, because she had gone through like the Naked Mind methodology, she knew how central and core compassion was. She would actually visualize herself of throwing the baby, like falling down the stairs, and she would visualize herself walking up and hugging herself and just like giving herself a big hug and a big kiss, and actually getting really in touch with, like, and just saying, it's like, okay, it's okay. We get through this. You're doing the best you could with the tools you had. Like, don't worry. And just really doubling down on learning compassion for ourselves. Because if you want to change this for your kids, like, that is the way. It is through self-compassion. Is through self-forgiveness. And then you're modeling that beautiful behavior for them, which, okay, I don't know about anybody else, but my kids sure beat themselves up all the time. And I think it's just a really natural thing. And so how can we interrupt that pattern? How can we teach them this? I think through modeling it for ourselves.
Totally. Yeah, that was a really good point to make, honey. I think that's one of my favorite quotes from you that I use all the time when I'm speaking to clients. I'm like, just, you were doing the best you can with the tools you had. And it just is so beautiful and loving and warm. And I use it all the time with myself as well when I look back, because I think we all have a bit of guilt over our behavior, you know, and it's just, you know, at the end of the day, I remember listening to something you were saying around, you know, sometimes it's that guilt that helps propel us to do different things, you know, and that's so you know, in a way we can see it as a bit of a gift as well, because I've spoken to a lot of people who feel guilty about different things that have happened when they've been drinking. But I think one of the things, I know the Drug and Alcohol Foundation here in Oz say, you know, one of the greatest things is our ability to change, you know, and our ability to do things differently and to change that situation. And that's the beauty of, I think, what you guys teach, and how quickly as well we can, change that situation for our children, and how quickly we can really pull them into something that feels a lot safer.
They're so resilient. We're so resilient,
yeah
our children are so much more so. And really just saying, okay, like knowing, because at the core of it, guilt can motivate us, and that's a good thing. But stuck in guilt or stuck in shame and beating yourself up, it is a quite selfish behavior, because what it does is, in the moment, we take action against ourselves in the nature of chastising, beating ourselves up, all of this stuff. And actually that action makes us feel better, because we feel like we're doing something and we deserve it. And so we feel like we're taking like some action. And so we feel better. So it becomes this thing where people can get really addicted to beating themselves up, because they feel better, they feel justified, and they feel like, okay, I'm taking some action towards correcting my behavior. But all of the research that I've seen recently says, no, like that action doesn't correct your behavior as much as saying, okay, I did something wrong. I'm owning it. I feel that, but I also am going to make a different choice going forward without that repeating guilt beating and shaming of myself, because that only serves me. It doesn't actually serve our kids for us to keep beating ourselves up.
No.
It makes the whole thing awkward. And what does beating yourself up, especially if you start to do it verbally, especially, I can't believe I was such a bad mom. Oh my gosh. What does your kid feel like? They just need to comfort you. So then they're assuming the role
they're responsible.
Right.
Yeah.
Not a gift to them. Like it's a gift to you. It's a very selfish behavior at its core, because you're almost fishing from your own mind, from stuff. And so actually the radically selfless behavior is compassion. And I know it's hard to get your head around, because it's kind of a different concept, but I believe that's really true.
I agree. I think it's so beautiful. And the ladies that I've been working with recently, that is absolutely core to everything. And that they've come to me through you, and they're like, it's just so different. It's such a different way of looking at, it's not about, quitting or failing, and those kind of words just go away. It's about choosing and freedom, and forgiving yourself and being kind to yourself and loving yourself as hard as you really can. Just such a beautiful methodology. Certainly has worked for me. So I'm passing it on to as many people as I can.
I love that. And Emma, if somebody wanted to work with you directly, where would they find you? What is your website?
So my website is www, and then it's hoperisingcoaching.com.
Hope Rising Coaching. Okay, we'll put that in the show notes as well. That's awesome.
Awesome. Thank you, Annie.
So let me ask you the question we kind of end this on, which is, if you were going to go back to Emma of your yesteryear and tell her about what life is like now, what would you tell her?
It's difficult, isn't it? Because you don't want to criticize her. I don't want to criticize her, but I'd say to her, you're enough as you are. You don't need to drink to try and be something else. Yeah, you're good as you are. Yeah, and give her a big cuddle.
I love that. So good. So good. That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. It's very good, and for the work you're doing in the world, and just for being on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Annie. I really appreciate being able to be on here.
Hi, I'm so excited, you guys, because we are just about to start another live alcohol experiment. And if you
do not know about the alcohol experiment, you need to literally drop everything right now and go to thisnakedmind.com/LAE. That's LAE for live alcohol experiment. And here's the thing, this 30-day challenge is designed to interrupt your patterns and put you back in touch with the best version of you. You know, it's that version that's living the most joyful life, that version that doesn't need alcohol to relax or have a good time, and that version that's having more fun and is more peaceful than ever. Again, it's a 30-day challenge. It's live. It's starting on the 1st, so hurry up. Go to thisnakedmind.com/LAE. And as always, rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast, as it truly helps the message reach somebody who might need to hear it today.